totally. But that's why he wanted me in the band. You see, I always say this to people, you know, I'm not so much a fan of the Beatles as in a band that's a rival to the Beatles, because we were all like that in those days. They were the Beatles, we were the Moodies. You know, we all wanted to be big, they wanted to be big. It was friendly competition. They were our friends. John and George used to come by our house and play their demos on the way out of London and stuff like that. We had parties, we used to do everything together. We were on tour with them. But there's still a rivalry there. We still want to blow you off the stage. Follow that. I mean, Eric Clapton said it to us one night. We were doing the Marquee. He went off his set and he went, follow that, you know. And you go, that's what you do. So I was never really like the fan of the Beatles, but I loved what they were doing, don't get me wrong, you know. So there's kind of between me and Paul, there was always that competition, a friendly competition still, you know. Can you come up with something, or can I come up with something? Yeah, try and beat, you know. We did that in Nashville, where he wrote one country song and he said, why don't you write one, we'll see what comes out the best, that kind of thing, you know. But you're kind of kicking each other, you know, to do something, which is good, it's healthy. So he asked me, because he knew, he'd seen me at this show, and he knew where my head was at as far as trying to be progressive, you know, and also that I could do it on my own, you know, same as he could do it on his own. So when you get that combination of people together, you know, and the thing about, of course, in recent years is that the collaborations have become much more acceptable. You know, people aren't in bands anymore. They're kind of doing crossroads, and they're doing, you know, in-session things, and they're joining up, and guest artists and all that. It used to be like that in the old days, where you'd have a gig and somebody would be in the audience, they'd come up and do a couple of songs, you know. It's the same principle as that. But whereas with me and Paul, we'd known each other, I mean, from, I don't know, I mean, very early days. Every band in England really came together at the same time. The Animals, the Beatles, the Stones, you know, we all sort of met each other in the clubs. We'd sit down and be talking about the business, having a few drinks, watching bands or whatever. And we would, people like Jose Feliciano would be on stage, and just some kid who's playing the guitar and say, who's that? Oh, he's good. And next minute it'd be in the paper, you know, anything the Beatles gave the stamp of approval to, whoosh. Same with Dylan, you know, me and Paul went to see Dylan one night, and of course he gets in the paper that Paul went and see, you know, and whatever, the Byrds, Loving Spoonful, you know, and Hendrix, you know, you get a couple of Beatles in the audience, then everybody writes about it, yeah, you know. So that's really, we had that camaraderie right from, even if we were going out and having a drink together and having a laugh, you know, or playing, maybe going up the Playboy Club and playing a bit of, you know, poker or something. You know, you have that thing where you know each other. So there's a lot of communication was easy, you know, there's a lot of that connection. And it wasn't hard work, you know, it wasn't hard work. And, you know, as a result of that, we never really argued about anything either. It was always like, yeah, we'll try it, you know. And it always used to work out pretty good. And then we never laboured anything, because if something didn't work out that great, then we'd just put it on the shelf and go to something else, you know. There's always that energy. There's a lot of ideas coming. It's kind of exciting, that whole period, you know. And then, of course, you get the audience reaction on top of that. Yeah, you know. It was cool. And the other thing about the live stuff was we're experimenting with that. We're experimenting with sound, lighting. You know, the first laser we used, the first flown monitor system. A Swedish guy invented that. So they weren't on the floor, they were up there. You know, it was pretty experimental all the way around, and we had the luxury of having, you know, a lot of stuff built for us. And synthesizers too. I mean, you know, if we wanted a sound that we experimented on in the studio, and we wanted to reproduce that sound on stage, you know, some Japanese guy would come up and say, would you like us to build you something to get that sound? And that would be that's the next version of the Roland synthesizer, or something like that. The Moodies did that. You know, Mike Pinder used to work at Mellotrons, so he was a tester for Mellotrons in Birmingham. So, you know, he became the guy in the Moody Blues that made it famous, let's face it. So it's that principle where you were in that luxury position of being able to, you know, try things first time. Stevie Wonder came in the studio one night with a little Linn drum, and it was the drum that he used on I've Just Called to Say I Love You, that little tinny little drum sound. And that really sparked off everybody using drum machines, the Linn drum machine. He gave it to Paul as a present. There you are, try that. You know, and so, I mean, you try new things, you come up with an idea around that particular instrument or piece of equipment, you know, and then away you go. Even if it's an echo machine, you hear something, you go, and it inspires you to do something with it. So it was pretty fun stuff, yeah.